one-stop shop for fantasy advice dedicated to your roster, where we're going to break down the strengths and weaknesses, discuss the short-term and long-term path for your roster, and give as well some insights, specific inside trades dedicated to your team to see how we can set you up for success. My name is Rahul. You can find me at Twitter at nrahul11. I'm writing articles for Going for Two. A little sparsely. I got to get back on the writing grind. But yeah, I'm here. I'm here today with Jerry Wilkie. How you doing, Jerry?
Hey, what's going on? Excited to get through another couple of rosters here. We got a couple of different rosters, and I see some similar players. They're obviously in different leagues, but it's going to be fun.
Yeah, big Jalen Hurts day ahead of us, huh?
Yeah.
But yeah, we do have two rosters breakdown for you, so let's get right into it. So Jerry, if you want to bring up the first team.
First team is Eagle Dan FF.
Eagle Den FF, thank you so much for the submission. And yeah, let me just preface our starting with the best way to get your roster reviewed is by joining Going for Two's Discord channel. We've got a whole channel itself within that dedicated to the fantasy assessment, where people can toss their submission links in, and that's the best way to guarantee that we get to it. So yeah, thank you so much, Eagle Dan, for the submission. We're looking forward to reviewing Hurts So Good. This is actually a team. It's a 12-team PPR league, and they just did the startup too. So this is a fresh team right off the draft board. So Jerry, why don't you go ahead and talk me through the quarterbacks on this team?
All right. So he's got a trio of quarterbacks. I think two of them are pretty much going to be his top two quarterbacks throughout the year, Jalen Hurts and Trevor Lawrence, and then he has a Kyle Trask mixed in there somewhere. So he does have a decent stretching it, but decent backup because we don't know who it is in Tampa. But going off of Jalen Hurts and Trevor Lawrence, you got two could be top five quarterbacks. Hurts has the potential to be the number one overall quarterback this year. Trevor Lawrence probably going to be between 6 and 10. He has top five upside, but we're probably looking towards 6 to 10 overall due to his, I wouldn't say limited rushing upside, but less rushing upside than some of these other guys. Your Lamars, your Hurts, your Allens. So, and that obviously in fantasy you want quarterbacks that can do both. But Trevor Lawrence and Jalen Hurts are an awesome duo. Could be one of the best duos unless somebody ended up getting Mahomes and Allen on their team, which would be crazy. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a nice duo to start. Trask, that's the only note that I have for him is when one of these guys is on their bye week, Hurts or Lawrence, is Trask the guy, or do you have to go and super flex a skill position? So that's really where the only question mark comes in. If Trask is starting half the year, all year, could be. Hopefully, it's a decent matchup. Hopefully, he gets a team where he can throw 200 yards and a pair of touchdowns and just get you by that week. But for the most part, it's going to be Hurts and Lawrence, barring any injury. Decent room. I would look into getting another body on that roster, whether it's somebody with upside or a rookie or something, or just like trading away another asset to get another quarterback in there that might be starting, or at least go after Baker so you have both of them.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you hit the nail on the head. This is what dynasty dreams are made of. Have a super flex unit with Hurts and Lawrence, both top six QBs, and I know Trevor Lawrence doesn't necessarily have the rushing upside that a Hurts nor a Fields nor Lamar has, but he's the kind of QB that you can see get into the top five of dynasty assets overall based on his ability as that pocket passer. If you look at Joe Burrow, for example, he's maybe QB4, debatably QB3, based on who you ask. You can definitely get the longevity with Trevor Lawrence. So I think no issues there in the starters. I would agree with looking for a QB3. I like the Baker plan that you proposed there. I would say I would predict Baker starts the year. But that could also work out in your favor if I don't know the bye weeks off the top of my head, but Kyle Trask could easily be starting by the time the bye weeks roll around. And we can definitely talk a few names when we get to the trade portion of the show for some cheap QB3s that you could target. But yeah, I mean this is the kind of room that everyone wants to have in a super flex. So quickly moving on from there into the tight ends on this team. Of course, you see him right there, big and bold, Mark Andrews. Tight end, I think the tight end one in keep trade cut, and my tight end one as well in Dynasty. Though I wouldn't begrudge anyone who has Travis Kelce there. I don't know if anyone has Kyle Pitts there. But I think Mark Andrews will have a bounce back year, especially from 2022. I feel much stronger about his long-term outlook after Lamar signed the contract, as well as Todd Monken coming in and, the promise for that passing game to be opened up. Yes, they did add some competition to that room. Obviously, OBJ, but probably more pertinently, Zay Flowers coming in. But that kind of also just means that Mark Andrews isn't the only receiving weapon to draw attention from the defense. So I'm very high on Andrews, not just for the short term, but the long term as well. That is a cornerstone asset for this team. If we scroll down to the bench, not really too much to talk about. As far as tight ends, I really like having Isaiah Likely in a team with Mark Andrews. I saw this tweet the other day that was like, Likely may be the first viable tight end handcuff, and that could be totally true. I mean, this guy actually plays like a receiver. He's built like a receiver, runs routes like a receiver. He has hands like a receiver. He's very talented. And you think Ravens, yeah, the scheme might change, but with their history of running 12 personnel, Likely could, as time passes, he could have standalone flex value even if Andrews is fit. Certainly, if Andrews is injured, Likely goes straight into your lineup. Hayden Hurst going over to Carolina, a lot more money than I actually expected. We don't really know how the passing volume on the team is going to shake up, but I'm okay with him as a bye week fill-in. And then Cameron Latu, the Alabama tight end, really not on, maybe not even the top 8 tight ends of the rookie class. I think there you're just you just hold and hope for any kind of value for that one. But very strong tight end room. What do you think here, Jerry?
Yeah, I mean, my notes pretty much matched exactly what you said. And I actually said that Isaiah Likely was a good stash or a good handcuff to have. I think he's more valuable to the Andrews owner than by himself. Mm-hmm. So he's, if with Dan here being the Andrews owner, Isaiah Likely perfect for his team. If one goes down, you're putting the other one in. Hayden Hurst, definitely a good bye week backup. And he's got a rookie quarterback throwing him the ball, so definitely could have some boom games there with having the safety blanket, as we like to say, coming in, maybe getting for the Panthers. Like, they really don't have a lot of pass catching options on that team with losing DJ Moore and bringing in old guy Adam Thielen. But overall, it is it's a decent tight end room. Yeah, I mean, having Mark Andrews definitely boosts that up a lot.
Yep, for sure. You can't really complain too much. I mean, Andrews is on your underdog drafts is going in round 3, which really, I mean, yeah, you have to consider the positional scarcity, but it really tells you how high people are on Andrews. And like I was talking about a bit earlier, with just the scheme change, I feel very confident Andrews having a bounce back year for the Ravens. So, Jerry, you want to get into the running backs on this roster?
The running backs on this roster. All right. Scroll back up here. Looks like they start 2 in this league, and then there's also 4 flex. One of them is a super flex. Mm-hmm. So could start up to 6 running backs if you wanted to, 5 without the second quarterback. It's a solid room. Definitely, probably the room that needs the most help outside of the QB3. Ramondre Stevenson, as we know, if you watch the last show, I absolutely love him. They
Mhm.
cut James Robinson recently. He's going to be an RB1 as long as he's healthy. It seems like Bill Belichick is going in a different direction with these Patriots running backs, and instead of always questioning, is it this guy this week or this guy this week, Ramondre seems to have been the guy for the past 1 to 2 years, and he's going to be the guy this year. Um, Aaron Jones, we mentioned him a little bit on the last episode too, because I think our guy had AJ Dillon, but
Mhm.
now we got the opposite here with Aaron Jones. I still think he's a high end RB2 with RB1 upside. Should be another safety blanket for Jordan Love, getting majority of the snaps and starts there in Green Bay. AJ Dillon, I think, is still going to take some away from Aaron, but Aaron is, as long as he's there, he's going to be they're going to be like a 50-50, maybe 55-45 split. He's pretty much startable every week.
Right.
I don't think he has that top five upside anymore, like he did. You're getting him a little bit later now, especially because of his age, but also because of the uncertainty there with all the weapons. But still a solid piece. Damian Pierce, mid to low RB2. The new regime in Houston specifically targeted Devin Singletary. So not that I'm writing Damian Pierce off, but I think they're going to have Devin Singletary in there too. He's going to have a lot of value. Damian Pierce he's perfect right where he's at. He's in the flex. I think he's more of a flex play this year for Dan's team, with starting Ramondre and Aaron Jones. A
Mhm.
couple bench guys. He's got Roshan Johnson, Rashad Penny, Deneric Prince, Israel Abinaconda, and Dwayne McBride. A couple rookies in there, a couple guys that are sitting second, third on their depth charts, but guys that with stronger camps or injuries could get a huge boost, being Rashad Penny and Roshan Johnson with the Bears or the Eagles and the Bears respectively. Abinaconda also with the Jets, kind of in that same category with a guy in front of him, a Michael Carter goes down, or Brees Hall takes a little bit longer to recover. He could get a boost towards the beginning of the season. Dwayne McBride with the Dalvin Cook news. He's now sitting behind Ty Johnson and Kene Nwagwu. He can get a little bit of a boost there too. But these are all like, I mean, I'm not comfortable starting them on a weekly basis, but they're guys that towards the mid part of the season, when running backs are starting to get injured, you might get somebody to step up there. So it's a weaker room. Basically, it really comes down to those top three, with Aaron Jones and Damian Pierce being kind of more questionable to me. I would definitely look into upgrading if we can in that position.
Yep. No, I agree completely with the summary and also the fact that this is maybe the weakness of the team, along with I would say depth. I mean, this is actually a 10 starter league, with that extra flex. It is a bench with high upside. I mean, who knows if Rashad Penny, who knows really who the RB1 at the Eagles is going to be. I know there's still a lot of Swift truthers out there, but don't write off Rashad Penny. It's just it's always been a question of whether he could stay fit. But here's maybe where we could suggest some trades to help Dan out. So moving on to the last position group, and probably the sexiest position group that Dan has here, and that is wide receiver. As you can see there, he's got AJ Brown and Garrett Wilson right at the top of the list. Wide receiver, two top five wide receivers. I would say AJ Brown, an established wide receiver one who went from strength to strength after being traded over to the Eagles. And I love having that stack too with Jalen Hurts. That is high power. Garrett Wilson, the darling of the Dynasty community at the moment. Some projecting, going into especially his 2023 value. But this is a guy. The talent is clear. The ability to earn targets is clear, and perhaps the biggest QB upgrade in the entire NFL happened in New York with Aaron Rodgers going over there. So very strong up top. You can look down in the flex that he's also got Christian Kirk and Brandon Ayuk. Both of them should be pretty reliable as I would say high-end wide receiver threes. I mean, both actually finished well ahead of that mark in the last season. I think Christian Kirk will take a little bit of a step back with Calvin Ridley coming to the Jags. Another stack, actually, I just realized there. Our man Dan loves his stacks. And Brandon Ayuk also played very well last year, finishing as a wide receiver too. But you have to keep in mind that Deebo Samuel was injured for a long part of the year. Reliable pieces, though, rightly in the flex. But, again, I do think depth is maybe where some moves may need to be made. But I certainly like having both Kirk and Ayuk there. Going onto the bench, Mike Williams should be a piece that you can toss into the lineup. But beyond that, not too many other wide receivers I feel comfortable starting. I mean, Rashid Shaheed is a bit of a darling of the Dynasty community. But him, Marvin Mims, Tank Dell, some upside, but no one I'd be comfortable starting. I really do like Puka Nacua, who was over there in the taxi, especially with the Rams depth chart being pretty wide open. I actually had a law on film that I liked, although he may start his career as more of a gadget jet sweep type player. So if you just to wrap that re-summarize all that, AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, Christian Kirk, Brandon Ayuk, Mike Williams, 5 pretty good starters if you fill your team with wide receivers. Beyond that, not much to talk about. But what do you think about the wide receivers here, Jerry?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really add too much that you haven't already said. There's not much more to say about AJ Brown and Garrett Wilson. We've already saw him finish in the top.
Studs.
Well, we saw AJ Brown finish in the top 10. Garrett Wilson, he gets a QB upgrade. And we even saw, even without a QB like Aaron Rodgers, he was still really good. So we're looking at 2025 before he doesn't have Aaron Rodgers again. By then, he's going to be even a better wide receiver, having 3 years in the league, 3 years of experience. So I don't think it's going to matter who his next quarterback is. Christian Kirk has the chemistry with Trevor Lawrence already, so it might take a little bit with Calvin Ridley to get adjusted. But so Christian Kirk still does have that mid-level wide receiver 2 upside. He could end up even being the 1. I mean, everybody's assuming that Ridley's the 1. It could still be Christian Kirk with Ridley coming in being the number 2. We don't know. Ayuk, you made some very good points as far as like being what he did with Deebo out, and I mean it's pretty not complicated, but it's pretty crowded room there for pass catchers, like not just wide receivers, but pass catchers. He mostly did all of his work with Deebo or Kittle missing. Right. And then you also got Christian McCaffrey there out of the backfield. So 4 top-level guys trying to get one football. You're going to have some good weeks. You're going to have some bad weeks. I actually like Rashid Shaheed a little bit more. Because we saw what he did with Andy Dalton last year, and I think Derek Carr is an upgrade there. The only question mark really is, are we getting any form of Michael Thomas back? So that's where Shaheed does kind of take a little bit of a step back. And Marvin Mims is a nice long-term play. I think you still got Tim Patrick and you still got Cortland Sutton there, but I think he could be the number 2 next to Judy starting in 2024. So he's definitely somebody I want to hold on to while you still have Russ there for another couple of years. So with Judy and Mims on the other side, that could be a nice 1-2 punch starting next year. Kind of see what happens this year if he gets on the field. Obviously, Tim Patrick coming off the injury, the whole Denver offense really didn't look too hot at all. But it's a solid room. He's got five wide receivers that all have top 24 potential. So I mean that's definitely a nice way to start your team. And then a couple question mark guys and Shaheed, Mims, Dell, and Nacua.
Yep. No, I think I agree completely with you there. I do like how he's constructed his bench. When I first looked at it, I was questioning where the depth was, but there is a lot of upside in the pieces that he does have. Just to wrap up the team breakdown itself, I'm going to talk a little bit about the draft picks. Dan, so first, keep in mind that this was a recently completed startup. Dan has actually traded away all of his 24 picks, which maybe makes a bit of sense then as to how post startup he's got Jalen Hurts and Trevor Lawrence. I would say that's without knowing these explicit details, I would say it's probably worth it to get two top 6 dynasty assets as well as AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, Mark Andrews. All 5 of those go in the first 2 to 2.5 rounds of your startups going now. He does though have someone else's 24 first, so he does have that in the bank if he needs to make moves. All of his other picks are still intact. Any quick thoughts on the draft pick situation?
No, I mean, it's really hard to look out to 2025. This is really not. I mean, right now, if you're acquiring 2025 picks, you're really kind of like getting them added into packages. So it's hard to look into there without having any 2024 picks. It's a little, not really much to really look forward to next year. If the season doesn't start off too hot, maybe sell off some of those assets that we got here and look into acquiring some 2024 picks, but it's not a necessity. And then anything beyond 2024 is just like, hey, you're giving me this, let me add your 2025 second to it to sweeten the deal, and then maybe get some more picks that way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, he does have another team's 24 first, so he does at least have that for some flexibility in season.
I hope he finishes in last.
Yep. I mean, this is a good segue into the next segment of the show, but this is a very strong team. I would expect, unless there is some kind of behemoth lurking in this league, that the 24 first from the other owner is probably going to be earlier than Dan's own 24 first. But with that in mind, what's your take on how this team is looking for the upcoming season 23, and how do you like the build for years going forward?
I think it's a solid team overall. I think it has enough top end pieces to be competitive every week. I think he is a couple of injuries away from really hurting though. I mean, we already talked about the depth at running back. We talked about if one of those top 2 quarterbacks goes down, he's hurting with Trask. The wide receivers could make up some of those points, having 5 of them that you could pretty much start every week in a league that you could start technically up to 6, but you're probably starting a quarterback in the super flex. You can start all 5 wide receivers, and then having the top 2 tight end. Really, tight end's not going to be a problem. You can probably sell a hot Hayden Hurst to a tight end needy team if you needed to, because Mark Andrews is pretty much the tight end 1 in Dynasty right now, because of Kelsey's age. But in a perfect world, this team is competitive if nobody gets hurt. Obviously, there's going to be injuries. Might need to work around that. Hopefully, Roshan Johnson or Rashad Penny gets more work than what we're anticipating, and maybe add some more to the RB depth.
Right. I agree with that, and then I agree with that completely for 23. It is, a Ramondre injury away from that RB room being, not strong enough to, maybe sneak into the playoffs. With that extra flex spot compared to most leagues, depth will be a little bit more important. I am optimistic for the long-term health of this team. Especially with those wide receivers. Garrett Wilson is going to be a centerpiece. AJ Brown is a little bit older. He will. Actually, he turned 26 by the time the season starts. That isn't too old. You've probably still got 4 years out of him, although a very physical style of receiver. Mark Andrews also, 4 or 5 years of production. And then, the team is held down by the 2 quarterbacks. I love the long-term outlook for this team. He is teetering a little bit on the line for this year. If everything goes right, this could be a contender, but if everything goes wrong, and we know in fantasy things do go wrong, it could quickly be a situation where you do regret trading away your own pick. So with that all in mind, Jerry, what is one trade you would suggest Dan makes here with this team? Or more.
But I mean, I definitely look into more running backs, or you know what, the running backs are fine. I would definitely look into the quarterback. We already mentioned it at the beginning. I'd probably look into trying to get Baker Mayfield, at least to go with Trask. And if you have to, not have to, but like just get another quarterback that could help, and even somebody that like a Desmond Ritter or Matt Corral, somebody that you know is going to start some games. They shouldn't cost you too much. Now, obviously, quarterbacks in Superflex League cost quite a bit, but shouldn't cost you too much because we don't know the future beyond 2023. Both of these teams could be picking in the top five and looking at a Drake May or Caleb Williams next year. So it's really hard to put a lot of assets into not a long term play, but you definitely need to get another guy that is that you know is going to start some games, because we don't know Kyle Trask is going to start any at all. I mean, Baker could start all
Right.
17 for all we know.
No, I agree with that kind of thinking. I mean, some QBs I would look at purchasing, even if they are rentals. I really do like the Baker idea, but maybe a Matt Stafford, for example, I think is someone who's like super undervalued in the current dynasty market. You know, you're not going to get much out of him beyond this year, but that is a QB attached to Cooper Cup, who could very well be the wide receiver one in fantasy again on a Rams team that their defense, besides Aaron Donald, is absolutely gutted. You know, this is a team that's going to have to throw quite a bit. I also do like maybe a Desmond Ritter or a Sam Howell. They are getting a little bit more of a bump up, but that could still be a cheap deal to do. I also wouldn't mind some kind of deal where you split up one of these assets, like one player. You know, Dameon Pierce. I think he should be a fine, mid to low end running back too. But I also am, I think, like you said too, a little bit more concerned about the threat of Devin Singletary coming in. Can you split up Dameon Pierce into, maybe a Pacheco and Stafford, or not? Maybe not Pacheco. Maybe if not Pacheco, can you do like Connor and a QB, or Connor or like a Brandon Cooks? Can you tier down to maybe Rashad White, who some people are much lower on? Rashad White, and add just another piece there, whether that's the QB3 or some depth. I think splitting up one of these more, higher value assets, not your locked in studs, but squeezing some extra value there that you can play into your lineup. This is a start 10. So you do have to consider that, especially if injuries start to hit. Just to quickly finish off, I mean, you do have some high value pieces like Roshan Johnson. I know Jamie's really gonna hate the suggestion of trading Roshan away, but that is a crowded Bears RB room. There could be someone in your league who is a little bit higher on Roshan, to where they give you a viable starter that you can toss into your flex. These are some of the moves that you can make. But overall, Dan, I think you have a very, very good, very well set up team here, teetering on the edge. But this is a game that you go big or go home, and I think you're set up to do just that. Great. Any finishing thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, just we already mentioned like trying to upgrade the running backs. I don't want to keep on beating a dead horse, but like look into where I would start is go to the Swift owner and see what you can get for Penny. Go to the Singletary owner, see what you get for Pierce. Even go to the AJ Dillon owner and see if you can get something a little bit for Aaron Jones. And we talked about this on the last episode too, when we were talking about Jeff's team, because around where Aaron Jones' age is right now, we're seeing those running backs kind of get cut from their teams. Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette, Zeke Elliott, Aaron Jones could be that guy next year. So if you could get something, go to the AJ Dillon, see if they want their handcuff, and see if you could upgrade maybe a quarterback and a lesser running back there, and you're still selling at Aaron Jones' name value. So that's where I would start as far as like looking to move some of these guys away, is going to the handcuff and seeing if those guys. Me personally, I'm not interested in handcuffs. I've never really been into the handcuff game. I've always liked having other people's handcuffs, but that's where I would start with my league mates because a lot of my league mates like handcuffs, so I would go in that direction.
Yeah, no, I think that all makes sense. I mean, I really like the idea of being very specific with who you target for the pieces that you have. I think that's the best way to squeeze value, out of the players you want to get off your team. So great. That's the first team on the night. Before we move on to our second team, I just want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of tonight's show, and that is Underdog Fantasy. I mean, you know, in this offseason, this is the best ball time of the year, and Underdog is the best place to draft those best ball teams. It has it all: industry-leading best ball leagues with huge tournaments, private leagues, and pick'ems. They're not just football. Scratch that itch by playing contests in every major sport. You can sign up with our promo code GF2 and get a deposit match up to $100. At that point, you're playing with house money. It's as simple as that. Sign up, use promo code GF2, and start playing, and of course, start winning. Great. So let's move on to the second team of the night, and this one is from another friend of the show, Eagle, otherwise known as Micah P99. Jerry, if you want to toss that roster up on the screen. Like we said, it is Jalen Hurts night, huh? But here, Micah P99. This is a 12-team Superflex PPR. And our friend here is the defending champ. So congratulations on last year's chip. It's a very strong team with potential for the future. So we're excited to break it down. Jerry, do you want to start off with the quarterbacks on this team?
All right. Well, if you're this far into the show, you already know about Jalen Hurts. We already talked about him for Eagle Dan. He's a top 5 quarterback, has number 1 overall upside potential. There's really not much to say about him. He doesn't even need to throw for 30 touchdowns to be the number one quarterback. Justin Fields, we really haven't gotten any of him yet. Well, this is only our third breakdown. He's a top 10 fantasy quarterback. He gets a nice little boost this year with DJ Moore. Maybe he gets that Kyler Murray, Josh Allen. I can't really call Derek Carr a boost because Devontae Adams didn't do much.
Jalen Hurts himself.
Getting Jalen Hurts Brown. Too.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he gets that same kind of boost that those quarterbacks had when they got a stud wide receiver. And DJ Moore's a stud wide receiver. You're probably going to get a little bit more rushing out of Justin Fields. Not that you didn't out of Jalen Hurts, but it's not like, I wouldn't say DJ Moore is on Stephon Diggs or DeAndre Hopkins level. But DJ Moore, he's a solid, he's going to catch anything that goes his way. He's going to give you 1,200 yards and a handful of touchdowns. I think Justin Fields definitely gets a boost there. And then all the other weapons too are just another year older. Mooney, they're not really too fond of him right now, but that's a weapon of the, or not Mooney. Mooney they are fond of. Claypool they're not really fond of right now. And then Cole Kmet gets another year in that offense too. So I think he's got some weapons around him. He's going to be pretty solid. Matt Corral, he's a guy that it's tough. Like we had a lot of like not really hype for him last year, but I thought he was going to come in and at least show Carolina something, and then he got hurt. So it's hard. There's not really much to say about him because they did go out and draft Bryce Young this year. So being a super flex league, definitely need to look into because I don't think there's a taxi. There's not a taxi. No. So really his only quarterbacks are Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields, obviously in a super flex. And I'm going to say it every single time we have a super flex league. You can always play a skill position in that super flex spot. I've done it many times last year when I was weak in the quarterback position. I've won championships with it. I don't advise it, but I have won, so it can be done. But so don't sell your soul to just get a quarterback, but you got to get another quarterback.
Yep. No, I think pretty similar situations with both these rosters. So Eagle, you might want to actually definitely check out the trade thoughts that we gave on the last team for some QB3 suggestions. But two very, very strong super flex QB starters. I think I am a little bit higher on Fields. I think especially for next year, I would say Fields is a top 5 fantasy QB with QB1 upside. I think in addition to DJ Moore, I really like what they've done with the O line. Um, not just picking Darnell Wright as the 10th overall pick. They also brought in, I think Nate Davis, I want to say, is the guard that they brought in. So they are, putting pieces in there to make sure that Justin Fields can, perform to the best of his ability. The reason Fields is probably not, or definitely not in that tier of, Hurts, and then in the last team we also saw Trevor Lawrence. He's not the same tier as like a Justin Herbert, is we don't know if Fields can be the long-term guy. And the Bears do have the capital to make a move for, one of your Caleb Williams or Drake May, kind of pull a similar trade to what they got for the Panthers, but next year from the Cardinals, if they don't feel like Fields is going to be the long-term guy. There is that risk, but you can't be too unhappy with those starters in a super flex league. No QB3, so we will want to look at something there. But we'll get into that in a second. For now, though, I'm gonna turn over to tight end, and you see Dalton Kincaid right there in the starting lineup. Who else we got? Gerald Everett and Cade Otton. So tight end, not really the strength of this room. I mean, there is, of course, long-term upside with Dalton Kincaid. The potential to be Josh Allen's Travis Kelce is, I'm sure you've seen 100 or thousands of times on Twitter this offseason. I mean, I really do like the player. I do like the fit as the quote-unquote slot receiver for the Buffalo Bills. For this upcoming season, I am a little bit lower just because of the history of, rookie tight ends in the NFL. I think Gerald Everett might end up being the week-to-week starter for your team. In what should be, will be a high-power offense, but also with the new coordinator in Kellen Moore coming over after absolutely feeding Dalton Schultz with targets over his time at the Cowboys. I think Everett is actually a sneaky play that I've been targeting in my own underdog leagues. So sneaky play. Cade Otton, not much to write home about, especially without Tom Brady there. But, he's a decent tight end. He should be the starting tight end on an empty depth chart. You can throw him in a pinch. But tight end isn't necessarily the strength of this team at the moment. What do you think, Jerry?
Yeah, no, it's not the strength, but it is 3 bodies that I think you're going to get some value out of all of them. I actually like Cade Otton quite a bit more. I've been, like Gerald Everett, maybe have been going later in your underdogs. I've been getting Cade Otton in the 17th, 18th round as my tight end 2, tight end 3, just because I think like they got Chris Godwin and Mike Evans there, and we don't know who's going to be the quarterback, but I think Otton is going to be. I think he takes that second year step that we want Kincaid to take in year 1, basically. I like Kincaid's tough. There is no taxi. I'd probably be starting Gerald Everett or Cade Otton for a majority of the year until we see what Kincaid's going to do. I think I was a year early on Everett. Actually, I grabbed him all over the place last year. I think he's going to be a little bit better this year. But again, it falls into the one football, all these targets philosophy. So it's hard. You're going to have some up weeks. You're going to have some down weeks. I think Cade Otton is going to finish as I mean, it's not saying much because it's not hard to be a tight end 2 in fantasy football. But I think he's going to finish as a mid-level tight end 2. He's going to give you some very good weeks.
Yeah. I mean, I think Cade Otton's the kind of guy you can probably pencil in for 4 catches and 40 yards like every week, just based on the depth chart, not just at tight end, but also at receiver. You think with weaker QBs like they have in Baker and in Kyle Trask, it's more likely that a safety valve like a tight end gets used. So he should be a really safe option, actually. So let's move on to the next stage of this team, which is running back. And before I turn to you, Jerry, I do want to say that there was a trade that just broke actually in the time between this team got submitted and we're doing the show. Eagle actually had Saquon Barkley on this team, and I was looking at the roster, like, where the hell did Saquon go? But he just made a trade, sending away Saquon Barkley and Rondale Moore for Rashad White and Quentin Johnston. And I know you're a Rashad guy, so I'd love to hear your thoughts now on the running backs in this team, as well as that trade too.
So Saquon and Rondale for Rashad White and Quentin Johnston. So I mean, it's a fairly even trade. The thing with Saquon is, like, we know what Saquon is, but he's also a little unhappy with his contract. Is he there? Is he there in New York for just this year? Does he miss any games this year because he's holding out? Does he miss any games this year because he gets hurt? It's really hard. Like, Saquon, a fully healthy Saquon is a top 5 running back in the league, top 3 running back in the league. But him not being super happy, I don't mind. Like, I'm not really fond of the Rashad White swap and Quentin Johnston, but I think in the long term it could work out, especially if Rashad White is the long-term answer for Tampa. I think it really all comes down to Rashad White being the long-term answer for Tampa, because I do like him this year. I like him in 2023. I like that Tampa didn't do anything to really bring anybody else in that's going to threaten him for touches. I mean, they did bring a couple of guys in, but none of them are really those. Like, we were looking at names like, are they going to bring in Kareem Hunt? Are they going to be in the market for, or are they going to bring in Lenny Fournette back cheap after they cut him? Or are they going to go and basically swap Lenny out for Ezekiel Elliott, which all still could happen. But up until this point, they haven't really addressed the room, and it's kind of Rashad White's room. So I like it for 2023, and hopefully it's a long-term answer, and then that deal looks a little bit better. As far as Alexander Mattison, Travis Etienne, we already talked about Rashad White. He's got Brian Robinson. He's got the OG B Rob. Now it's a new B Rob. So it's and he's got Dalvin Cook too. So overall, the room it's solid. I mean, you only need to start 2. He's got pretty much 3.5 guys, and if Dalvin Cook lands somewhere, no matter where he lands, I don't think there's a team in the league where Dalvin Cook lands where you're not going to like his value. I mean, right. He could go to a team where he's more in a 50-50 split. But Dalvin Cook, if he signs somewhere, he's going to be on the field. So between the 3.5 guys that he got, I'm counting Brian Robinson as a half a guy because I like Antonio Gibson a little bit more this year. It's a decent room. I mean, could be better. Obviously was better with Saquon Barkley, but Mattison gets that little bit of a bump with Dalvin Cook gone. ETN, he's going to be catching passes out of the backfield. He's a good runner. He's fast. They brought in a little bit of competition, but nothing really to write home about. I think ETN is still going to get about 60% of the work, which should be good enough. Mattison, probably about 65% of the work. And then Rashad White, we should see probably about 70% of the work. So you got some bigger work guys there. Brian Robinson, probably more, not necessarily touchdown dependent, but I think he's going to be around the goal line a little bit more than Antonio Gibson. So you get the 6-point boost from him for those touchdowns. Maybe he ends up 8 to 10 touchdowns, 800 yards, and he's a decent flex play for a lot of the games. But I think Antonio Gibson has a rejuvenation year this year, so I'm a little bit down on B-Rob, OG B-Rob.
Yeah, that's just a note that don't let any of your trickster league mates scheme in a B Robinson into your trades. Make sure you see that it is Mr. Bijan there. But yeah, I think I do agree with your summary. I mean, this team did lose, if you want to call it 2 hammer running backs in, of course, Saquon, but Dalvin Cook, though inefficient, still was a running back that scored points last year. And without both, I mean, Saquon traded away and Dalvin probably not getting a feature workhorse role wherever he lands up. That is a negative to the team. I am also pretty high on ETN. Even if Tank Bigsby, Dearness Johnson do cut into his work, I like the potential increase in efficiency. Him going into year 2 should, should theoretically get better at the receiving game. And then that offense also will just take a step forward with Trevor Lawrence getting better and Calvin Ridley coming in. So I think he's fine at running back, even if it isn't a strength and certainly not as much of a strength as it was in his last season. So then, just to finish up with the players on this team, we'll get into wide receiver, which you can see it right there, very strong, very sexy. But I am just gonna preface this by mentioning a trade that I probably should have before when we were talking about QBs. But Eagle actually did trade away the 2023 102, which ended up being Anthony Richardson. And he acquired Jalen Waddle as well as Terrace Marshall. And real quick, before I dive into the receivers, what do you think about that trade?
Having AJ Brown, T. Higgins, and we're going to talk about the bench a little bit, which isn't great. But I think even with the bench being not that great for wide receivers, I might have kept the 102 because you need that third quarterback, especially with two guys that I'm sure their offenses don't want them to run as much, but two guys that will run as much, always the possibility of taking a wrong hit. And even Anthony Richardson might be that guy too, but at least you have three bodies. I probably would have kept the 102. I do love Jalen Waddle though.
No, I agree with that. I think the value is pretty fair. I mean, Anthony Richardson is really going very high in startups right now. So I think the value is fair. Maybe would have thought about a different allocation of the assets. That all being said, let's look at what is obviously a very strong wide receiver room, especially those cornerstone assets. And AJ Brown, who we did just talk about in the last team, locked in wide receiver 1. Again, with that stack, it is the Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown night here, the fantasy assessment. The newly acquired Jalen Waddle, the Penguin. Who knows if Tyreek Hill is going to get into a little bit more trouble. We'll keep our eye on that for you. But even if Tyreek plays, Jalen Waddle, I think will be a low end wide receiver 1, a high end wide receiver 2 at worst, with potential for way more. Similar things with T. Higgins, and both of them really. I mean, if you see an injury or something happening to Tyreek or to Jamar Chase, those could be two of the best receivers in the game, in the game, in real life and in the game of fantasy football. So very strong 3 wide receiver core there. He's got Jerry Jeudy in the flex, who I do like. I think Jeudy quietly. Hey, he had a pretty understatedly good season, which was overshadowed by the Broncos' overall struggles. It is probably a prove-it year, really, for Jeudy. They did take his 5th-year option, but if he is to earn a massive contract, we'll need to see a little bit more out of Jerry Jeudy. On the bench, he does have Brandon Ayuk, who we did mention should be a solid piece to bring into your lineup. You're not really too worried about that. He's also got Curtis Samuel, Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis. I remember the Gabe Davis hoopla from last summer. Mecole Hardman over at the Jets now, and then Terrace Marshall, newly acquired. We also, can't forget is another newly acquired player in Quentin Johnston. Probably not someone I'm looking to rely on this year. But with the ages of Keenan Allen as well as Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston is someone who has a lot of upside heading into the future. And then a few other young receivers in Tolbert, Khalil Shakir, and Dontavian Wicks. Overall, I do like this room a lot. You can start 4+1 with a super flex up to 5 receivers on a weekly basis. And I think, you have both your hammers who are cornerstone pieces in the top 3, as well as some depth where you're not really sweating about starting any wide receivers. So I do like this room here. Any thoughts on the wide receivers that in this team?
Yeah, I mean, it really doesn't get any better than the top four. I'm going to throw Judy into there too. I think Judy has another solid year. I think we're going to see a lot better from the Denver offense.
Hmm.
I think Judy's going to establish himself a little bit more. He's a guy I've been targeting. Obviously he's the one that I want in Denver. He's really not that close to Cortland Sutton in ADP, but just choosing between the two, I want Judy. Um, Waddle is always a threat. T. Higgins is a big touchdown threat. AJ Brown, I mean, basically same type between AJ Brown and T. Higgins, just big bodies. They're gonna go up there and bully you. Come down with the football. Could get both of them have double digit touchdown potential, 10 to 12
Hmm.
touchdowns. So I mean, you're as long as these four are healthy, that's probably going to be your starting four. Um, it's going to be another year before we see any consistency out of Quentin Johnson. You already established that, or you already talked about that as far as Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. I think he kind of takes over the Mike Williams role. The rest of the bench is pretty much, I'm going to call it a best ball bench.
I like that.
You're
Yeah.
looking at a lot of guys that like you're throwing flyers at in best ball, but being a league where you have to set your own lineup, it's hard to really say if you're starting a Curtis Samuel over one of those top four, if you're starting a McCole Hardman over one of those top four, if you're starting a Khalil Shakir over one of those top four,
Hmm.
and really trusting them into your lineup. Solid players, but like I really can't see me throwing them in unless it's a bye week or an injury. Gabe, hopefully he has a resurgence and comes back to. I mean, just have a better year than he had last year. There was a lot of drops there with him. But somebody on that offense needs to step up, whether it's him or Shakir or Sherfield or one of these other guys that they brought in, or even
Or
Dalton Kincaid.
Kincaid. Yeah.
Yeah. Ayuk we established with Eagle Dan. He's a solid. I mean, he's probably locked in as the fifth best wide receiver on the team, which isn't bad. I mean, having Ayuk as your fifth best wide receiver is definitely a good option. But it's just a mosh posh of guys that like it's really hard to play on any given week, even with like Terrace Marshall going up against Atlanta's defense week one. That's a hard play. I mean, even if three other guys are injured, that's a hard play right there, even against
Hmm.
Atlanta, because you don't know. It's I would definitely look at upgrading the room a little bit more. It's more like it's just bodies, and not really. It's more quantity over quality.
Yep, yep. I agree with that. I agree with that there. Just to a quick mention of the draft picks for draft capital that Eagle has here. I really wish they would show the draft picks in this view. It would
Yeah,
make things a little bit smoother for us. But he's got all his picks aside from a 2025 first, so nothing to worry about at the moment. Something to think about maybe in a year's time. Um, anything quick to say about the draft pick situation?
well, I guess we could just segue right into trades
Yep.
with the draft picks. I would probably look at dangling the 2024 first and 2024 second out there and seeing if you could upgrade the wide receiver room, or even seeing if you could grab. You don't necessarily need to upgrade the running backs. I mean, if I were to go and pick a position outside of a third quarterback, it's going to be trying to get another solid wide receiver. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I would look at seeing if you could get another wide receiver for the 2024 first or 2024 second, and go from there, because you got the picks. See if there's anybody that is in the tanking mode, and take it off and run.
Yep. Yep. I mean it's interesting, and really the Saquon trade uh maybe gives you an idea that he's starting to try and pivot away from out of like a championship window when he's lost. He did lose Saquon and lost Dalvin Cook. Maybe that championship window is closing a bit. So you're at that crossroads, maybe, of what do you do next with this team? The strengths of it are the young pieces, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, the three wide receivers, someone like ETN, and then the potential of a Rashad White establishing himself as the RB1 over in Tampa. There are young pieces. do you push all the way in? I think you can contend, without too many moves here, but there's that chance, if you see an injury to one of your starters, there's a hole, a tight end. It may not stack up with the best teams in the league any longer. So, moves I could make beyond the QB3, which we talked about in the last one, but also again, like Matt Stafford is like a QB3 that I'm looking to acquire on contending teams. Upgrade, yeah, I do like the idea of upgrading a receiver. You could even toss maybe combine like a Brandon Ayuk and like a Brian Robinson to see what that could get you as far as a receiver upgrade. Ayuk is in that kind of group of receivers. Like on Keep Trade Cut, you'd probably have them as like wide receiver 20 to 28 that are all very similar in age and points per game. Can you combine Ayuk with one of those bench running backs to get like another long-term cornerstone asset? That's something I might think of tiering up. Tearing down, we do love to talk about our cheap depth. You could certainly add to this. I might check in on the Waller owner to see how their team's doing. Can you get a cheap Waller trade? In most of my leagues, I haven't seen any Waller trades. I don't know if you have, but like the Waller owner probably didn't do too well last year. Might be in a bad position this year and may just be looking to get anything they can for him. You add probably the Giants target leader for the next season into your starting lineup, and suddenly that's a lot stronger. But yeah, those are some of the moves I would make for this team.
Yeah, I'd look into maybe stacking your Justin Fields, maybe looking into a DJ Moore, seeing what that roster needs, and see if you have his weaknesses. I might try to dangle Dalvin Cook out there, and maybe to the guy that lost to Zeke or lost Lenny Fournette. Mm-hmm. And even though they're in the same boat, Dalvin Cook has a little bit more steam. I think he's, of the three of them, he's probably the one that's going to be the most effective out of the three. So say, hey, I know you lost Zeke, or I know you lost Lenny this offseason. Do you want to take Dalvin Cook and take a shot on him and see if he ends up going somewhere and becomes a good running back for you? I might do that and try to upgrade somewhere else. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get DJ Moore. Definitely got to look at a different quarterback. It's really hard to say. Like, you'd have to package a couple together, which you already mentioned, Brian Robinson and Ayuk, but packaging Brian Robinson and almost any of these wide receivers and trying to see if you could upgrade just one position to see, just because like I said, it is a lot of bodies. There's probably some guys out there that are a little less in the wide receiver department that you could probably get some value out of some of these guys.
Yep. I also wouldn't mind. I know this is the defending champion, but you could also, I don't want to say, take a year off, but this is a team that should get better next year with Quentin Johnston coming in. Maybe he takes that role that we're trying to fill right now. If you could get rid of some of that dead wood and get some extra 24 draft capital, you could be in a better position to attack again the following year. But that's all we have for the rosters. I hope both of you guys enjoyed that show. We certainly enjoyed breaking down those teams, and we're looking forward to more submissions. Jump into the Discord channel and let us know your thoughts. Also, let us know your thoughts right onto the YouTube video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on those notifications on our YouTube channel. If that's your jam, do give us a review on the podcast channels. Really quickly, Jerry, tell the people about what you're working on, where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can just find me at Jerry Wilkie FM, displayed right on the screen. Just right on Twitter. You can search for me on Facebook, just Jerry Wilkie. If you want to hit me up in the DMs there, or just check out any of the pages that I am an admin or just running on there. I know Jeff has a couple more betting pages, but definitely look into those. And yeah, it's just going for two. We got articles coming out pretty much all the time. I am the IDP podcast guy, so in season on Saturday nights, you'll see me and my partner talking some IDP strategy for you guys.
I am Rahul. You can find me at nrahul11. Always down to talk NFL, fantasy, and also soccer as well. My articles too are ongoing for two. But thanks for joining, and we'll catch you.